All right, so let's talk about adding an additional $1 million to your net worth. So, whatever your net worth is today, zero, negative 20, negative 100, 2 million, 3 million. But how do you add an additional $1 million to your net worth? Right now, if you already have $1 million net worth, maybe this isn't really helpful for you, and that's fine. But what this video is targeted at, or who this video is targeted at, is anyone who is in your early 20s, you have a job earning about $55,000 and above. And what I want to share with you today, guaranteed, would get you an additional $1 million added to your net worth. Now, understand here that this is not the ceiling, it's the floor. And it's going to take some time, because one of the secrets about wealth creation is that you need consistency, discipline, you need time to work for you, and of course, an income for you to be putting some money aside and investing it. But once you combine all these different factors together, I can guarantee you for a fact that you're going to hit that $1 million. There's a scripture in Proverbs chapter 21. It says that the plans of the diligent lead to plenty as surely as haste leads to poverty. The mistake a lot of people make is folks start thinking to themselves that, well, okay, great, $1 million sounds nice. How do I do that and become a millionaire in 2026? This is not what this video is about. It's not about getting rich quick. There's no such thing as getting rich quick. I mean, if you find any scheme that talks about how you're going to get rich very quickly, it's for sure a path to poverty. It's a path to losing out. What I'm talking about here is adding this $1 million is actually easy. It's very, very easy, but it requires consistency. It requires some level of discipline, and it's not a get rich quick scheme or anything like that. You're in your early 20s, you're earning about $55,000, maybe to $75,000, like average salary, right? Maybe you're doing more than that. That's great. Maybe you're mid-career and you're earning north of $75,000 or earning $150,000 plus. This is for you, and it's setting you up for this coming year, or this new year, 2026, is what can I start doing in 2026? Who do I need to become such that I'm set up for adding $1 million to my net worth, right? So let's start. First thing I want to talk about here is your mindset, right? Because for a lot of people, you probably heard the $1 million number and started thinking to yourself that, well, that's a lot of money. I'm not ready for that right now, or I'm not making enough money right now. I will do this later. Now is not the time for me to start doing anything like this. And it's important for you to correct your mindset, or to change your perspective and your relationship with money and your perspective on what's possible for you in your current situation, because the way you think ultimately becomes your reality. As you think in your heart, as you believe, that's ultimately where you're going to end up in life in the future. So the life that we live in today is a product of how we thought yesterday or previously. So if I can start correcting my mindset, my relationship, my beliefs about money, then I can guarantee that in the next few months, few weeks, few years, how I express or how my outcomes as it relates to money would be very different. So for some people, you have limited beliefs. You're thinking that it's not possible for you to add $1 million to your net worth. Well, number one, I'm telling you, it is very, very easy. It's very simple. We're going to talk about it. It starts with fixing your mindset. Maybe you're here saying, now is not the time for me right now because I have all these other things that I want to do, or I need to make a little bit more money. Well, we're going to also talk about that right now. You need to correct that. Maybe you're saying to yourself that $1 million, that's a lot. I don't think that that's really possible. You need to correct that, because whether you're 25, whether you're 30, 35, 40, 45, it's possible, right? Because I can guarantee you what I'm talking about right now, it probably will take about 10 years, 15 years, whatever that number is, but it is possible. And if you're thinking that, well, 10, 15 years, that's way too long, that's also another mindset that I can tell you for a fact you have to correct as well. Because this isn't about snapping your fingers and abracadabra, and then all of a sudden you have $1 million. Right? So fix your belief system. And what I want you to do right now is write down on a post-it, write down on your phone, make this your screensaver, put this somewhere where you can see this visibly every single day and affirm it on a daily basis. I have the capacity to add $1 million at a minimum to my net worth. I am capable. I have the capacity for one additional $1 million today. And affirm that consistently, put it somewhere where you can see it consistently as well, because you need to shift your belief system. And when you do that, that ultimately then becomes your reality, right? Your behavior start changing. You start seeing possibilities. Your reticular activation system is activated to see opportunities for you to add the additional $1 million to your net worth. Also tell yourself that, it's possible for me. It's something that I'm capable of doing. It's something that I can realize in my lifetime in the next few years. So that's number one. It's about your belief system. Now, the other thing I would say as it relates to this first point here is that everything that I'm sharing with you right now, it's about basics, right? It's about foundations, right? So if I set the foundation and I get into the right habits, into the right behaviors, and I'm doing the right things, ultimately I would see this become my reality in life. Because if you're faithful with little, you would then be faithful with much more. And if you're in your early stages of your career, you're like a much younger person, because I'm sharing with you based off of what I know, what I've practiced, what has worked for me, but also what's researched. So in essence, let me reframe it this way. Knowing what I know right now, if I were to go back 20 years from where I'm at right now, 15 years, 10 years ago, what would I do based off of the knowledge that I have today? And how different would my life be? That's what I'm sharing with you right now. It's the practical steps that you can take. And the beauty about wealth creation is when you start out initially, it feels like nothing's happening, right? But the discipline and the mindset is ultimately what makes you able to continue to compound millions and to grow in millions. That's why this mindset that I'm talking about, your thinking, is the foundational programming that you need. Compound interest is one of those things where I can explain it to you, I can write it down mathematically for you, I can show you how the numbers work. But you see, just the comprehension of compound interest is something that is very difficult to grasp. I don't know why that's the case, but it works, and it works in a way that feels very magical. Meaning that I can take something, right, and just consistently do it every single day. It's small increases, but those little actions every single day over a long period of time produces something that is mind blowing. And that's why this is important, right? Because if I can get that base down and allow compound interest to work for me, get the discipline in place, build, the activity. Actually, let me show you what I'm talking about, because there's this thing about a dollar compounded. If you take like 1 cent and it doubles, right, over like a long period of time, doubling daily, let's do the math, right? So 1 cent doubling daily over the period of a year ultimately shakes out to, it's $3 times 10 to the power of 107, right? So it's pretty much like, I don't even know, it's an insane amount, right? It's like 3.2 times 10 to the power of like 100, right? That's like an insane amount of money. The lesson here is compounding is just like, I can't even fathom what that number is. Like 100, 10 to the power of like 100. That's what 1 cent doubling every single day over a period of 1 year does, right? So the point I'm trying to make here is that it's something that is mind blowing. If I can get the consistency right over time, then the principle works out for me, right? So number one is you got to lodge it into your subconscious, right? Into your spirit, into your mindset, into your psyche, that I'm capable of creating and adding $1 million in net worth in my life. And I can build the foundation this year in 2026. starting now. The second principle here, or the second thing I want to share with you, is about becoming. Oftentimes, in videos like this or in sessions like this, a lot of people want to get to the, oh, okay, so tell me, what exactly do I need to do? Okay, right, this sounds great. Like, what should I be doing? I think that's the wrong question to be asking, because you first of all become $1 million richer because you've transformed yourself internally before the $1 million actually shows up. You see what I'm saying? So I become a millionaire, first of all, here and here, before the $1 million shows up in my account or shows up in my net worth. Becoming, first of all. And for a lot of people, this is why financial advice fails, is people are always looking for different tactics. Going back to this concept of it being very simple, I can share with you the basics, but if you're not the person who has become that, it doesn't really matter what I'm telling you to do, because it dissipates, it disappears. Well, let me rephrase it this way. If I give you $1 million today, right? You fix your mindset and I drop $1 million into your account. If you're not the person who's able to own and manage and grow $1 million, what would happen is that $1 million would go from 1 million down to 900,000 to 800,000, $500,000, $200,000, and ultimately to zero. And you might actually go down to negative. And another example of this point here is, have you noticed that when you were in college, for example, you lived on, I don't know, maybe you were making like $1,000 a month, right? And then all of a sudden you get out of college, you get a job, you're earning 50 grand. And then your net worth goes from $0 while you were in college to negative $100,000. Now that you're actually making 4 or 5 times how much you had when you were in college. The reason is because even though you got more money, you were not a person that was able to handle that, which is why a lot of people leave college or leave like one level of financials or finances. They go to the next level, but then the net worth actually goes down deeper in the red because they haven't become the person, even though their income has increased. Which is why it's a fallacy to think that your income is what's limiting you as it relates to wealth creation. Because if your mindset is that your income is what the limitation is, you're already on the wrong track. Because ultimately, it's your person that is the limitation, right? Your being is what is the limitation. So you have to transform. So if you set a goal, the goal in and of itself isn't necessarily the end, right? It's who you become in the process of achieving that goal that actually helps you to sustain that goal. Because if you hit the goal without any internal transformation, then ultimately what's going to happen is that you're going to shrink back to who you ultimately really are. So becoming then becomes important, right? Is who do you have to become to be able to sustain and to continuously create $1 million in net worth? And I'll tell you what it is. You have to be a person who's patient. You have to be a person who's disciplined. You have to be a person who's consistent. And you have to be a person who is knowledgeable. See, because for a lot of people, so let's talk about the patience, right? We've addressed it somewhat. A lot of people are looking for a hasty way to get rich, right? I cannot tell you the number of people where I share with them something. I'm like, hey, look, this is simple. Go do this. And they're like, oh, well, that's going to take a long time, 10 years. Or, like I said this, 10 years, 15 years. And they're like, But then someone else comes around the corner and tells them, look, put your money in this. And in the next 6 months, you're going to make this kind of money. And they're like, their eyes light up. They get so excited. They're like, yep, take the money. You've already failed if that's how you're thinking about wealth creation and money, right? So patience is important, right? It's just having the discipline to say, you know what? Compounding interest is a principle that just works like magic. And it's hard to comprehend, but it just works. I'll tell you, like in my life, there are certain things that I was doing 5 years ago. And man, when I was doing that, I'm like, it looks like I'm losing out, right? Because it's just like trickles. I'm not making so much money. But man, when I look back right now and see what those investments have done for me, it just is, it's mind blowing right now, right? Because those investments have compounded in a way where it's beyond what I could actually understand, but I understand the magic of compounding interest. So that patience and that consistency to keep on doing it because it's a principle that works, and how I feel about it now or later is not really what matters. So patience and the consistency and the discipline, right? And then the knowledge gap. So a lot of people don't invest because they don't understand. A lot of people are like, well, I don't really understand how the stock market works. Or a lot of people say things like, well, I don't really understand how real estate works. I don't really understand this. So because of that, they do nothing. I don't understand the concept of risk and volatility and investment returns and so on and so forth. Well, get the knowledge. There's so much resources that are out there right now that you really don't have any excuses for not knowing. So many resources out there. Get the knowledge. Read books, watch videos, read financial journals like Chat GPT, just like basic for dummies. Like, just understand at a basic level how certain things work. Because when you fill the knowledge gap, it puts you in a much better situation, right? And if you understand what I'm talking about, the consistency and the faithfulness in doing something at a small scale, at a basic level, and doing that over time, it then compounds for you. So even your knowledge also compounds and produces results for you and benefits you. So the first thing we talked about is you believing that you're capable, fixing that belief system, everything that's limiting you in terms of your ability to create wealth and earn more. Second of all, is transforming who you are. Be the person who is, first of all, $1 million net worth person, or plus $1 million, $1+ million, right? Consistent person. Building that individual is also the second thing that we're talking about. So once you do those two things, that's the foundation, right? Because if you become that person who's capable with the right practice, with the right thinking, with the right mindset, again, the plans of the diligent would lead to plenty, as surely as haste leads to poverty. No matter where you're living, if you go into certain neighborhoods and you congregate on average with the people in the neighborhood, it tells you something about the affluence and the ability to create wealth of those people on average. But there's also, the opportunity to go to a different neighborhood that is maybe lower income demography. They generally would think the same way. They generally would approach life the same way and do certain things the same way as well, right? So your thinking and your personhood makes the difference. Now let's talk about vehicles, investment vehicles. Now, but before we get into that, protecting your downside, let's start there. Knowing what I know right now, I'd say if I were back in my early 20s when I first got a job, I would buy a life insurance policy, term life policy, because insurance doesn't necessarily make you rich, but it just protects your downside, right? It protects risk while I do all the things that I need to do to get to where I need to be. Now, I know we all like to think that we're not going to die, we're going to live forever, and we're going to live like very long lives and so on and so forth. I believe that. I expect that. In fact, the Bible promises that with long life, God would satisfy me, right? And show me his salvation. So I believe that. I expect that. However, we've seen people who have gotten into unfortunate situations and they haven't had any protection. If you're young, maybe you're not married. If you're a young person in the diaspora, right? Take a Nigerian like myself. One of the things that you see that happens for a lot of people is that your parents have done so much to send you somewhere, to school, where you're earning an income, all those things are working right now. So they're sort of looking to you, right? Because your earning potential then becomes vast and very different. Or you're paying for the fees for your siblings and things of that nature. At least if you buy like a million, 2 million, $3 million policy while you're young, it's going to be cheap. And buy it for like a 20-year period, because what I'm sharing with you, for sure you can get done in 20 years. Like definitely, I can guarantee you that. You buy that policy, you protect your downside, and if anything happens to you, at least you know those that you leave behind are well protected, right? And you're ensuring that risk while you make the right decisions, while you do the right things over time, right? And you can do the things that I'm talking about with the peace of mind without the stress. One of the things that I see that happens for a lot of people is that they get into situations and they're working, they're trying to build something for their family, and they're saying to themselves that, man, they're stressed out about what could go wrong, but they haven't protected their downside. So as a result of that, they're very stressed out. And it's like, oh my goodness, like I have to deal with this. There's so much pressure on them to perform so they can take care of their loved ones, right? So just get that downside protection, right? And then we get into the tactics right now. So number one is, if you are earning about $55,000 to $75,000 or whatever it is that you're earning, I think the target I'd say is you want to set about 15 to 20% aside so that you can store that money away and invest in it consistently. If you're early in your career stage or you're early into investing, one of the simplest things to do is to put money and invest it in the equity market. The US equity markets, for example, on average have returned, about 8% over the last 2 to 3 decades, right? 8% consistently. Could it go down? Yep, but always, like with a 99% guarantee, it goes up over time. And you can put money aside. That's what I would do. 8% every year and let it compound for you over time. Have an individual account. And it's so easy these days because you have what's called a robo advisor. And it's like a robotic advisor where I don't even have to know about investing. I just have to know that it goes up. I just put money aside. And these days, like, investments are so liquid that you can always access the money. Put the money aside. Think about, there's Betterment, there's SoFi, Fidelity Go, there's Wealthfront. Vanguard has like a platform. Acorn has a platform, that like all these platforms where you can just like set your investment profile if you're young. If I were in my 20s, I'd set it to the most aggressive platform because I have time ahead of me. I just have the money sitting there and let it do what it does, right? Just compound itself and just constantly grow itself over time. So if you're between $55,000 and $75,000, I would target roughly about $300 to $500 a month, right? Every single month, put that aside. I like to stretch. So I'll say do $500 every month. If you're doing about $100,000 in income every year, I would target putting out about $20,000 a year, which is going to be, about $1,500 a month, about 18,000, but maybe about $1,600 every month aside into an account like that for it to keep growing. If you have a 401k, free money out there, at least contribute up until what your employer would match. If you have an IRA account, I would put out money there, up until the tax deferred limit. And I know there's a lot of people out there who would bash these retirement accounts and say things like, oh, your tax bracket's going to be much higher in the future than it is right now. Don't put your money into things like that. Yes, maybe, right? Maybe. But the reality is, what I see and what I know for a lot of people is behavior is the problem. So why don't you solve for that behavioral issue and just get the money out there, just let it keep growing, right? That's the goal. Like, I don't disagree with the logic behind saying my tax bracket is going to be different in the future, but it's more so around, do I have the right behavior right now? I'm training behavior is what I'm doing right now. Yeah, when I do it consistently, again, I'm training myself to be faithful in doing the little things. When I do that consistently and I know how this works, then I can make adjustments in the future. It's not a forever thing, but I'm building the foundation right now. I'm just setting, the money aside. Now, let me actually show, let me do the calculation right now for you. So let's say you do $1,000, a month at 8% a year over 10, 15, 20, and 25 years, and actually show you what that translates into, because this is the beauty of compounding interest, right? So in 10 years at 8% annual return, that's about $183,000. You keep doing this consistently. In 15 years, it's about $350,000. In 20 years, it's $590,000. In 25 years, it's $930,000. And that's like a basic market level return. If I set it at a more aggressive plan, right, maybe at like a 12, that yields an average of about 12% every year, right? Here's what that calculation actually shakes out to be. At 12%, in 10 years, that's $230,000. Compare that to $183,000 at 8%, which is market participation, nothing aggressive, nothing slightly riskier than the market, right? At 15 years, that's $500,000 at 12% return. Compare that to $350,000 at 8% return. At 20 years, that's $990,000. You've hit your $1 million there. Compare that to 590 at 8%. At 25 years, you're at $1.9 million, right? Compare that to $930,000. And that's by getting an extra 4% return every year. So if you're a young person who's starting out in your career, I would do this hands down all day long, every single day. You might be saying to yourself that, well, if I'm 25, you're telling me that at 50 years old is when I'm going to get that, $1.9 million. Yeah, I know a lot of 50-year-olds that don't have $2 million like sitting in their retirement account. You don't want to be one of those people. And again, the idea here is you stretch early on in your career, but then if you're in a later stage of your career and then you're earning about $100,000, $200,000, $1,000 a month is nothing. You can do that. It's possible for you. It's something very simple for you to do. Again, this is about becoming, and this is about mindset. So you put that money aside and that money just continues to grow for you. It's a very simple vehicle that if I were you, I'd leverage that for sure. And this is what I know. This is what has worked out for me. Now, another vehicle, so stocks always go up, always on average. The other vehicle that always goes up, tested over time, is real estate, right? I actually like and prefer real estate more than stocks. That's just me, my personal bias. But you can do both. If you're starting out, you might not actually have the money for a down payment to do real estate. So it doesn't give you an excuse to not invest. So while you actually set the money aside to build in real estate, you can actually start investing in the stock market. That's easy to do. So all these different robo-advisors that I talked about, right? Again, none of this is sponsored, right? But Betterment, Acorn, Wealthfront, SoFi, Vanguard, Fidelity Go, all these different platforms that are out there, they invest for you. You can set up an account right now. You go do your research, figure out which one you like, which one resonates the most with you. Just start putting your money aside into those things right now, starting today. Be aggressive when you're young. Put the money aggressively, build the right habits, transform your thinking around money, your relationship around money, and put the money aside. And at some point in time, you start seeing it grow so much, and it then becomes addictive, right? Because when you start seeing the results of the compounding, you definitely would want to continue doing it because you're saying to yourself, this actually works. Now, I like real estate. Again, starting all over again, I would definitely house hack, right? And house hacking is, I can get myself into a real estate investment in a non-traditional way, in a sort of like a scrappy way. That's really what house hacking is about. So, for example, in the US, if I'm going to be an owner occupant in a home, I can put down as little as 3.5%, 5%, right? So, take an average home in the US for $250,000. Go research what it is in your neighborhood, in your community. And what I recommend is you're not trying to buy a mansion, you're not trying to buy a fancy house, just like simple workforce, like the average person home in a decent neighborhood, or buy the worst home in the best neighborhood, right? Because you would always have good quality tenants and there's stability in those neighborhoods. If you're looking for a little bit more appreciation, go into a neighborhood that is sort of transitioning. It's has good access to where employment is, and where there are all these different neighborhood amenities, grocery stores, and banks, and things of that nature. Find a home there. The average appreciation in real estate in the United States is about 4% every year, consistently over time on average. 10% of that is $25,000. 5% of that is $12,500 plus closing costs, right? Is what you're ultimately targeting. So if I want a house hack, what I want to do is I want to get into one of these homes, and either I buy a multi-unit, 2-unit, 3-unit, live in one unit, rent out the other units, or I buy a house, 3-4 bedroom home, stay in one of the bedrooms, maybe I keep 2 for myself and rent out the other 2. But the whole idea here is I do that, I have someone who's subsidizing my mortgage. And then after 1 year, after 18 months, I move out and I repeat the process. Your target is 3 to 5 apartment units. If you get to 5, you're good. And you can actually get to 5 in as little as 5 years. Maybe it takes you 7 years, maybe it takes you 10 years. That's not what matters, right? Again, we're trying to build a foundation that gets you the plus $1 million. What I'm sharing with you is so simple. Many of you would not do it because it's too simple, it's too easy. It's very, very easy, I guarantee you. But if you do these 2 things that I'm talking about, it makes all the difference for you in your financial trajectory. And your house hack, you do it for 1 home, you move out after 12 months, after 18 months, you repeat the process and just try to get 5. 5 at an average of $250,000 every single year. 300,000, 400,000, appreciating at 4%. Now, let me actually show you. Let's do the math about what your net worth is. So let's say, for example, right, you do 1,000 a month in stock market at 12% a year. And well, let's use 20 years, right? House hack, $300,000 home, 1 every 18 months, right? At 4% appreciation, and your total net worth in 20 years. Let's see what that number shakes out to be. Right? Guaranteed, this is going to blow your mind when you actually hear the results of this. So I take $1,000 every month, I put it in something, I forget about it. Most aggressive plan, 12% a year, and I'm giving myself a 20-year timeline, right? Because I've become the person who's not trying to get rich quick, but I am building the foundation, right? Because even though I'm setting myself for a 20-year timeline, the person I become in the first few years of doing this is someone who is going to multiply and perpetuate this wealth over time, for sure, right? So 20-year timeline, I do that consistently, right? And then I'm house hacking every single 18 months or every 12 to 18 months. $300,000 home that's appreciating at 4%. So here's what happens, right? $1,000 a month in 20 years is $1 million stock portfolio, right? And then the house, the real estate, if I keep doing, $300,000 every year, appreciating at 4% a year, the homes are worth about $5.7 million, call it about $6 million. But then there's probably a mortgage, that's on all of those things that's roughly about, call it half of that. So your total net worth is going to be north of $5 million with that framework that I just shared with you in a 20-year period. So just think about what that does for you in your life and in your situation. Very basic, nothing fancy, something that's very simple. And if that's all you did and you stopped, and that just keeps on growing, for sure you're a multimillionaire. you've become a transformed person, you have the necessary assets, and you can continue to grow. Well, hopefully you found this helpful, and I'd like you to practice all these things, make a commitment, transform yourself, transform your life financially in 2026. Number one, affirm that you have the capacity for $1 million. Number two, become the person who is a millionaire first of all, and then the money follows. Protect your downside, term life insurance. Put money aside, 15 to 20% every year. Do this on a monthly basis in some equity account. Number five, make a commitment to buy one investment property every 12 to 18 months and target doing this for 5 apartments or 5 investment properties in all, and see what that does to your financial trajectory. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, share this with someone who would benefit from it as well. Thank you.